Hey guys, John here. In today's video we are checking out the awesome, the excellent Fractal Audio AM4 amp modeler. And this is going to be a lot of fun. And let's jump in right away with a demo track that I recorded specifically for this video with my new Balaguer Espada Baritone. Take a listen. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that little demo track there. 4 different tones. So a nice clean tone with some reverb, a nice chunky rhythm tone with my favorite Fractal Audio amp model for high gain, then a very filthy fuzzy tone, and then a very ambient clean tone. Now, all of those sounds were done with one single preset. So that is pretty awesome, right? So with the AM4, there's no need to switch between presets for a lot of different sounds because this is quite a powerful unit, and we'll get into that, okay? Now, I remember years ago, I think like, I don't know, 13 years ago or so when I got my first Fractal Audio product. It was the XFX2. Then after that, I got the 2XL Plus, then the XFX3. I've had an FM3. Now my main unit is my FM9 Mark II Turbo, which is on my desk here. That's also my main audio interface. And right now, I also have the AM4 here. And massive thanks to G66 for sending that over, by the way. I also have the VP4 on my pedal board, which you may have seen on my pedal board build video. That's a really excellent unit that does all the Fractal Audio effects, also with 4 blocks, 4 channels per block, etc. So that's a very powerful unit for effects. And then when they came out with the AM4 recently, I was really surprised, like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. So this is basically, as I like to call it, the gateway Fractal. So if you're on a budget, but you still want those Fractal Audio amp models and most of the effects, then the AM4 is for you. And this is such a fun and powerful unit. I'm not going to be able to get into all the details and all the capabilities of this pedal in this video, but we're going to just talk about some of the features that I like, explore some of the amp models. And we're going to start with exploring the preset that I used for that demo song, just to show you real quick how I created that preset. So again, I have my Balaguer Espada Baritone. This is the 10th anniversary baritone. It's my newest guitar, really cool, tuned to drop A flat. So it's nice and low, nice and chunky, right? And I basically created 4 scenes, as you can see with the editor. So I'm not really going to use the hardware unit. I'm not going to tweak the sounds with the hardware unit itself, even though you can do all of that, certainly, on the hardware unit. But as with most Fractal Audio products, especially since I'm a studio musician, I prefer to use the editor on the PC. So that's what we're going to do today, right? And the editor is very powerful. You can do everything on the editor. The cool thing about the AM4 is that it allows you to keep things quite simple. So with the amp block, for example, as you can see here, these are like your normal amp controls, right? But you can also go into the expert edit mode, which you can also do on the hardware unit itself. And then you get a bunch more parameters. I think all the amplifier parameters are here that you get in the XFX. I think they took out a couple like obscure parameters that I wouldn't use myself anyway. I'll show you some of the controls that I like to use in the expert edit mode. And then if you want to keep things very basic and simple, you can just go back to the normal mode, if you will. And there you have your standard amp controls, an equalizer, your cab block, and some extras like levels and balancing and a room ambience. Okay, so that is really nice. All right, now let's go back to the preset and let's go to the first scene, which is my clean sound. And for that clean sound, I have an amp loaded up. Now, I want to tell you about this real quick before I get into the sounds. As with all the Fractal Audio devices, for each block, you get 4 channels. And that means, you can see those channels over here. That means that for each channel, you can have a different amp block loaded up, if you'd like, or tweak the amp settings a little bit in between the blocks, which is what I've done. So for channel A, which I'm using for scene 1, and by the way, scenes, you guys know what scenes are, right? Those are basically presets within presets. But anyway, I digress. So for channel A, I have the 65 bass guy normal loaded up, and then for channel D, the same amp. I didn't even make any tweaks, I think. No, not between these two. But for the heavy stuff, I did make some tweaks. So channel B is tweaked a little bit differently than channel C, okay? Now, we're on channel A, which is the 65 bass guy normal. It's a great clean amplifier. I like to use that one a lot because it's nice and chimey. And then in the cab block, I'm using one of the stock cabinets. These are the Dyna cabs. There's a bunch of cabs that you can choose from. And then you can move the mics around and stuff. So those are the stock cabinets and they sound quite nice. We'll try them a little bit more later, but this is my sound. So I'm on the neck pickup, which is a quite thick sounding pickup. This is the bridge pickup. So the brightness of the amp block works really well with a thick sounding pickup like that. Now again, stock cabinet, 2x12 65 bass guy, and 2 mics, so a condenser and a ribbon mic. Sounds really full. I like that a lot. Yeah, and this preset is really simple. So, you know, just the amp block so that it's nice and clean. A little bit of breakup. Or barely, you know, just on the edge of breakup, basically. And then I have a reverb loaded up. A large hall reverb. Just to make it sound a little bit more ambient, right? So that is the first scene. Not a whole lot going on there. I'm a simple guy too. I like to keep things simple. So the AM4 is just like almost perfect for me, okay? Because as I mentioned, you get a bunch of effects like this reverb. These are all the effects that you get: compressor, delay, drive, enhancer, filter, flanger, gate, graphic EQ, parametric EQ, phaser, reverb, rotary, tremolo, panner, volume pan, wah-wah. Now there are some omissions there, right? There's no pitch block, so you can't do whammy effects. That is, for me personally, one of the main drawbacks of this unit. Now, I get it. They have to keep this within a certain budget. Maybe the CPU can't take those effects. Maybe it can't handle those effects. Or they don't want people to not buy the FM3 anymore, which is a way more powerful unit in terms of how many effects you can load up in the signal chain. So it's you know, this is much more basic and simple. Only 4 blocks. You can't move the blocks around in the signal chain as you can with all the other units, right? So maybe that's also a reason for them making that decision. There also isn't a synthesizer, and some of the more advanced delays, I think like the Plex delay and stuff, those are not in here as well. So there's some stuff missing, but the main one that I'm missing definitely is the pitch block. It would be wonderful if you could do pitch effects on this unit. Hopefully they'll add that in the future. If not, you can also, you know, either put the VP4 in front or after it, or, you know, just like a Digitech whammy or another pitch effect if you want to do those things. Anyway, I'm rambling here. Let's go to the second scene, which is a preset based on my favorite high gain amp, which is the Dus Metal. It's a very classic Fractal amp. It has been on here forever. I think it was based on the Diesel VH4 initially, on the schematic or something. It's very aggressive, very tight. And I always come back to this amp model for my heavy tones. So this is what I have going on here. Right? Very tight, very nice texture going on there. So those are my basic settings, nothing special. No EQ going on. In the cab, I have loaded up one of my own IRs, because with the AM4, just as with all Fractal units, you can load up your own IRs. This is the SDS Heyday Mix one, the main mix. You can get all my IR packs on my website, by the way. And I've loaded up IRs from all my packs. So that's like 34 different speakers. There are, let's see, 256 IR slots on this unit, which is quite a lot. Not as much as the FM9, for example, but enough for most people. So that's what I'm using for this particular tone. And I love that you can load your own IRs. You can make your sound a bit more personal that way, right? Now, that was preset 2, so that's only the amp block. Now, mind you, in the input section, you have a gate, which I'm using here. So that is cool. So you don't need to use up a separate block for using an input gate. Same thing goes for your cab, of course, or an EQ, or some, you know, room reverb, which you can do in the cab block. So that's nice. So it's already really powerful in that regard, right? And you can even have a preset EQ section over here so that you can add some additional EQ to your overall preset. So 4 blocks is not very accurate in terms of the amount of effects that you get. You can even go into your amp block, and let's go to Expert Edit, and then add a preamp input boost. That's kind of a clean boost with a certain color, right? So these are the boosts that you can choose from. Let's say we want a T808 sound in front of the amplifier. And let's see how that sounds. And off. So if you're into boost pedals and stuff for high gain tones, you can just use this instead of a separate block. That is really nice. Now I want to show you something else that you can do in the expert mode that I like to do a lot. These are the expert controls that I use all the time to tweak the response of the amp blocks. And that is the input EQ section over here. Now as you can see, I already have some stuff dialed in for my tone for the intro demo track, which is the definition control. So this control can give your tone more definition and clarity, right? So I have it set to around 2. And as you can see, it's basically kind of like a tilt control that can add more top end and upper mids, and then remove some low mids and low end, just to give your guitar a more tight sound. I can demonstrate. So this is at 2, which is roughly where I had it at. Especially for a baritone guitar like this, I need some tightness in there. Now let's put it back to default, so 0, ish. Whoops. There we go. It's not a bad sound. Let's crank it up to, let's say, 3.6-ish. So that's also kind of like adding a boost in front of your amplifier. You can tighten up the tone and really shape the response of the amplifier, make it more loose, make it more tight, etc. You can even boost the mids to get like a tube screamer effect, which I sometimes also do. So let's try that. And let's widen the Q a little bit there. You know, so that's a really powerful section, the input EQ. Remember that for sure. Again, I use it all the time, especially for that definition control, which is just so powerful. A lot of this stuff I never touch. I never change the tone stack or the tubes or anything. Of course, you can do if you want to. You know, you can add compression. Another thing that you don't necessarily have to add in an effects block, right? So that's awesome. You can choose the colors of the channels. In the power amp section, you can change a bunch of things like the sag, how the master volume reacts, the negative feedback. And then we get to the cabinet section. I'll show you the stock cabs as well. So this is just like with an IR. You get low cut, high cut. And then, of course, there's a preamp section as well, the mic pre section. So you can choose that. You use that to add a little bit of color to the sound and tweak the EQ even more, right? That's really nuts. So powerful. And then this is the speaker impedance curve section that you can, you know, go into and change the impedance curve. So that's another very cool and unique feature that not a lot of modeling platforms have. All right. But again, if you want to keep things very simple and don't want to go in depth, just go to the normal edit mode. And there you go. Okay. Another thing that I want to talk about before we go to the next sound, by the way, is the fact that you can use this device as your audio interface, which is what I'm doing right now. I have this connected to my computer via USB. That's how I'm recording the audio. And for the intro track, I also used it as my audio interface. So it was all going into my DAW digitally. And you can also reamp with the unit, which is what I did. So first I recorded the sounds alongside the DI track, and then I reamped the sounds just to get the sounds just right for the mix, if you know what I mean. So that's really awesome. You can have this and use this as your primary audio interface if you like, right? Cool. Let's now go to scene number 3, which is the nasty scene. Okay, for this sound, as I mentioned, I tweaked the amp a little bit. I think I lowered the gain. Let's check. Yeah, there's a little bit less gain. And I tweaked the EQ slightly to accommodate the filth. Take a listen. So the goal was to make something very filthy, reminiscent of an HM2. And for this purpose, I used the master fuzz. So these are all the drive effects in here. 77 drive effects. Okay, and again, you can keep things very simple, or you can go into expert edit and then tweak a bunch of stuff to customize the tone even further, which I never do for the drive effects at all. But yeah, for the cab section, once again, my own IR, which again is the Heyday. That's the Hesu Demon speaker. All right. And then for the final scene, I have another clean tone loaded up, again with the stock cab. I think same amp settings as the intro stuff, but I have a modulation effect going on here. So that's a nice chorus, analog stereo chorus. And for the reverb, I have another reverb loaded up then in the intro clean for scene 1. So if we go to scene 1, there's a different reverb. That's the hall reverb. And I have the Cloud Stratocumulus loaded up with it, which is like a very long reverb, very moody, right? Let's take another listen. So those are all the sounds that I used for the intro track. Again, all in one single preset. Unfortunately, between channels, you can't go between different types of effects. So you can't, you know, choose a different type of effect, like let's say a modulation in scene 1 for the first effects block, and then in scene 2 have a reverb going on. So you have to stay in the same category, but it's still very powerful. And if you take into account that you get an input boost as well as an output boost for the amp block, by the way, so that you can boost the level for a solo, which you can enable with the foot switch, by the way. You've got the EQ in the output, you've got the input gate, you've got the room ambience in the cab block, you've got the cab block integrated in the amp block. So again, it's like super powerful, and for effects blocks is actually, it's way more than that, actually, in terms of the sounds and tweaking capabilities that you get access to in a single preset. So that is really nice. Now I want to try some of the other amp models real quick and mess around with the stock cab as well. So I'm going to grab a different guitar, which is not baritone, so something a little bit more normal. All right, so I've grabbed my ESP EII Eclipse in vintage Honeyburst full thickness, which has a JB in the bridge and a 59 in the neck. All right, let's try some other amps. So let's go to an empty preset. Changes will be lost, no problem. And then you can choose your effects. Now let's go to this block and let's add an amp. All right, because I don't need to use any effects as of right now. These are the default stock settings for the Dus Metal amp. Let's add a little bit of depth, which is what I like to do. You also get the metering and stuff, which is cool, like all the other Fractal Audio products. Of course, you also get a tuner, which I do like to mute. There you go. And the tuners on the Fractal products are really good. So like really accurate. Love those tuners so much. So we've loaded it up and it already sounds really awesome. Let's go to the cab block. This is the default cab, the Recto Straight. Now you can choose different microphone types, 4 different ones. That's Dynamic 1 and Dynamic 2. I imagine one is a 57 and the other is a 421 probably. Ribbon. That's probably a Royer 121. Let's stick with Dynamic 2. Now, of course, you can change the position. Let's try that. Let's make it a little bit more warm. That sounds pretty all right. Let's go to the input block and tweak the noise gate a little bit. I like to set my release time really low. So there you go. Back to the amp block. Let's try another cab. Let's try the Citrus 4x12. Cool. Let's try the Solo 100. So as you can hear, the stock cabs are really nice. Of course, you can add another one and blend them, etc. So that's cool. Let's go to a more low gain amplifier. Let's try something. Let's go for a Friedman. Let's go for, because there are a lot of amps in here, as you can see. 248 amp models. That is absolutely crazy, especially for a unit with this price point. Nuts. And as you can see, we have a bunch of options. Diesels, Mesas, Marshalls. Man, so much stuff to choose from. But again, let's go for a Friedman. And what's nice is that they've consolidated, is that the word? Like various amp models into one. So if you take the BE, for example, and go to the amp section, you can do the voicing switch, which on my real BE 100 Deluxe is also there. And it changes the brightness of the amp. On my real Friedman, I like to have that at the brightest setting. So that's a nice low to mid-gain crunchy tone. I want to try the room section here. So let's crank it up, make the room a little bit larger. Let's make it a little bit more drastic. So if we make it more subtle. So that's a nice way to add a little bit of room ambience without having to add your own effects block, right? And then of course the output boost, which by default on the foot switches over here, if you click the same switch that the amp is on, it activates the output boost. So that's really handy for like solos and stuff, right? And of course, as I mentioned, you can also go and load your own user cab, IR, or whatnot. Let's go and try a rectifier. And because I like rectifiers. And let's go to Recto 2 Red Modern. And let's get a good sound out of here. Let's crank the gain up. It's a bit bassy. Let's, yeah, room stuff is off. So that's a Recto cab. Let's add a little bit more gain, lower the bass a bit, add some treble. Let's lower the master to give the amp a little bit more headroom. And if you're like, I need it to be more tight, you can either go into the input EQ and increase the definition, or maybe even add a low cut. That's a lot more tight, right? Or don't use this section and add an input boost. So let's say, for example, the grinder. Let's turn that off. Big difference, right? So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think you get the point. Only 4 blocks, but very powerful. So many amps to choose from. I mean, this list is really impressive, really impressive. And as I mentioned, some of the amplifiers have been consolidated into a single block, like the Friedman BE and the HBE. But look at this, man. All those amp blocks, and then so many effects to choose from. So if we go to the reverb block, you know, these are all the types that you can choose between. Like so many different types of reverbs, you know. Let's go to the flanger block. So many types of flangers. And I could go on and on and on. So I'm impressed. And for the price that you can get these at G66 if you're in Europe, or from Fractal Audio directly if you're in the States, it's really hard to beat. Like really hard to beat. The quality is there. You know, that legendary Fractal Audio amp model quality is there. The functionality is there. Also what you can do with the foot switches. Now, I'm not a live player myself. Again, I like to play in the studio and record. So I'm not going to use those foot switches. But, you know, if you click these at the same time, you can go between the preset mode, the scene mode, the effects mode, or the tuner. So you can do a lot with these 4 switches. Of course, you can add, you know, your own foot switch as well, or an expression pedal, etc. So it might seem like a very simple unit, which you can use it as, you know, you can use it in a very simple way, but you can also go really in depth and incorporate this into your rig and go crazy with all the switching and all the effects. And I'm impressed, especially for the price point. So for people who weren't able to afford the FM3 or the FM9 or the Axe-Fx, they might be able to save up now and get one of these and enjoy all those Fractal Audio amp models. I think they removed a handful from the other devices, like some old legacy models that aren't, you know, great anyway. And all these effects, okay, there are some effects missing, especially the pitch block. It's a shame that they didn't include that one. But I've only scratched the surface of what this pedal is capable of, and I am very, very impressed. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on the Fractal Audio AM4. I'd love to know. Also, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, as that really helps the channel out. And of course, you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to support the channel, get something in my affiliate links for Sweetwater and Thomann, or get something in my web store like an IR or capture pack. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.